Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of our conversation with John and Coleen Graybill on John's great-grandfather, Edward Curtis. As you remember, Curtis had photographed many of the Native Americans back in the early 1900s. Stay tuned to the end of the video. We will have some information on the Curtis Legacy Foundation where you can donate. You can find out how to get one or two of the books that John has published and much more information. So sit back, here it comes.
We've got these generations, familial generations, a bloodline going on here. And I can appreciate the passion that both of you have in this project to the extent, my great-grandfather was Edward Curtis, and I have some of his photographs. I know a little bit, actually quite a bit about him, but it would be so easy to say, and that's nice.
Just let it go at that.
And let it go at that. So what drives you?
I would have to say the stint that my wife Coleen and Jonathan Betts roping me into giving a talk at Guild, that really got the juices flowing. Because I knew of Curtis and I appreciated the photos, but I really hadn't taken a look at it, his life and the work that he created. And that was the genesis that really got me into it. And then once we actually got into the project, working with these indigenous people, they are, as a group of people, the most heartwarming, welcoming, loving people I know as a group of people. It's mind-blowing. They welcome us into their homes. They would give and share anything with us. Some of them you have to be really careful with, because if you say, oh, that's kind of nice, I'd like that, next thing you know, they're giving it to you.
Oh, you don't even have to say that. You just have to notice.
Yeah.
But I think one of the also big catalysts was early on when we had kind of started the Descendants Project. We went to hear a gentleman, Clay Jenkinson, who's a very well-known historian. He works with Ken Burns a lot and PBS, and he was giving a talk about Edward Curtis. And so we were at this and got to hear his presentation, which was amazing. But there were a couple things that are out there in various books that the family knows aren't quite correct. And so following the presentation, our friends who were also there, John mentioned that there were a couple things that he kind of got a little wrong. And so she went and told Clay that John says you have a couple things wrong. And so
She was bold about it too.
yes.
Oh no.
So we sat down and had drinks with Clay and we talked and we, explained more. Yes, yes. He was very open to hearing more, especially from the family. And he's like, the family has been non-existent in telling the Curtis story, which is very true because of how John's dad felt. And he said, if the family knows different facts than what are out there, you guys need to be telling them. You need to be sharing this information. It's your family obligation, per se. And we really took that to heart and decided that we do have information that other people don't have, and a lot of people had come to John's parents explains different things differently or talks about something that maybe John's dad had never read. And so part of it is making sure that Curtis's story is truthful and that we're sharing that, yes, we realize he wasn't perfect, but we're also judging him from this century when he worked over 100 years ago, and how you did things and how you thought about things, and the terms you used are not correct terms for today. And so he gets a lot of backlash for that. And so we're able to help give more sense to that. And
this sounds like it became quite a charge for you guys, and this was the reason that you've gone forward.
we want to help, his quote that he said, we want to make them live forever. One, be able to give a voice to our Native friends who are saying, well, maybe he didn't get this quite right, or let me explain this more. And so Curtis's name just opens doors for us to be able to give a platform to these different tribes to tell their own stories and tell their stories of today. And we just feel like that's an obligation of not only bringing Curtis's work forward through our Descendants Project, but being able to give them voice that they may not have a chance to because of Curtis's popularity. So we also want to help them live forever, and for them to show their family 3-4 generations from now what their life was like today. And we want it to be their voice as much as possible.
It sounds, because of that, it sounds like they're very willing to help you through this project and
Absolutely.
for this point.
Yeah, they're anxious to tell their stories. Yes.
So a couple exciting things that have happened recently with the release of unpublished work that the family has. When we moved John's parents into assisted living years ago, we had to obviously clean out their house. And in doing that, we found archives that we're not sure John's dad even realized he had.
Stuff tucked in this closet, that drawer.
Generation.
Oh my goodness. It was every nook and cranny.
So then as John and I kind of more the head of the foundation, which his sisters are both on the foundation board, because we feel it's important that the family still has some decisions on how things are handled in Curtis's history. So when we were cleaning out their house, we found all these different archives. And in that was so much material that has never been seen, that didn't get into the hands of the Smithsonian or to the novelists who were writing stories and things about Curtis. And so one of our missions is to publish a lot of that. We have memoirs that he wrote that's not in any other archives. It's only in the family. We have hundreds and hundreds of photographs that no one else has ever published. And so we feel it's important to put that out. So in our start in doing that, we've done 100 images from Alaska that had never been put out. Our unpublished Plains book has 200 images in it. And back in January, we were in Estes Park, Colorado, and we had gone to a First Peoples Festival. And in that, we had met a couple of gals that had a booth there at the festival. And so we're talking to them, and, she asked, why we were there. I mean, we're white people at a Native, function. And
What the hell are you guys doing here?
And so we explained who John is and his history, and they were like, oh my gosh, I love Edward Curtis's work. I was just saying a couple months ago that I want to be able to photograph like Curtis photographed.
Oh, really?
And that I want to capture the history of my family and to bring that forward like he did. And so we have this beautiful conversation with her and them. And so I run out to our truck and bring in an unpublished Plains book for her.
New book that nobody's really seen.
No, a new book. It only been out 6 months. We published it last summer. And she gets home and she's looking through it, and she calls me and she says, I just showed this book to my grandfather, and we found pictures of his great-grandfather a picture that we've never seen before and one of his brother that we've never seen before. So we were just up in Montana. We're doing a book signing at the Custer Battlefield Trading Post, which is right outside the park. And we have a gentleman come up, and he's flipping through the pages and looking through all the crow images that are in it, because we're in crow country. So
And he seems excited about the book.
he was really interested, and all of a sudden he stops at this one image, and he like taps on the name, and then he just bolts.
Oh, no words, just leave.
No words, no nothing, just walks away like quickly. And I'm like, oh my gosh, did we just offend him? What just happened? So we just kind of let it go, because there was another person there that we were talking to. And about a half an hour later, I went to go inside to talk to the store manager about some book stuff. And I see him sitting at an outside table, and he was obviously crying, and he was blowing his nose, and I had the book open in front of him. And so I went over to him and I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "I just came from my father's grave, and this picture you have in the book is my great-great-grandfather."
Oh, my goodness.
And he said, it just really emotionally hit me. And I've never seen this picture of him before. And so that's so much about what we're doing and why we keep doing it. It's not for notoriety for us. It's not we're trying to make money, because FYI, we are unpaid and work full-time for free, because we think it's important that these images, these stories, the unwritten things, that they're put out there, and that they help give more substance to the Native friends that we're making.
Coleen brings up a really good point about why we do this, and seeing the expression on individual Natives when they see ancestors that they had never seen before. It's priceless. And to witness that firsthand, it's really heartwarming to know that you've created something that really touched that person's life. And so that's pretty much the genesis for our unpublished series, is to make these pictures available for the Natives so they can see pictures of their ancestors that they might not otherwise get a chance to see. I melt every time we experience something like Tumbleweed, the story that she shared with us. It's just amazing. So the foundation to that end donates these unpublished books, and currently it's unpublished. Well, it's Edward S. Curtis Unpublished Alaska and Edward S. Curtis Unpublished Plains. And then we have 2 more coming up in the series for Southwest and Pacific Northwest, and we're not sure where California is going to fit in there, but somewhere.
West Coast.
West Coast.
Yes.
Possibly. So the foundation donates these to tribal libraries and universities. We cover the cost of the book and shipping, and we've sent out well over 100 to Alaska, and where are we at in the plains?
60 or 70
Yeah.
so far.
Again, he's going to libraries and colleges and
To native,
Tribal.
to the native tribal libraries and universities.
And so unpublished Alaska, we donate into that region.
Right.
If somebody else wants it, we'll make that happen for them. The Plains book, we're focusing on Plains colleges and libraries, and we'll do the same with Southwest and the remainder of the books.
I got to ask at this point, what, I mean, this is huge. This is absolutely, I don't know what the right word is. It's just wonderful for you to, what made you think to do this? What made you think to, you've done this work, you've put some money out of your pocket, why not just pocket the money yourselves for these beautiful books?
There's been such an injustice done to Native Americans since first contact. If you look back, many scholars will put indigenous population at 50 million pre-contact. By the time Curtis is doing his project, it's less than 300,000.
Wow.
So what happened to these people? Well, they suffered from the diseases that we brought over. we suffered from an active policy of genocide against these people. And, sorry.
Say that. It's just fun.
The things that the dominant society did to these beautiful people is horrific. And it's created a narrative and a stereotype that we need to undo.
Don't be sorry at all, John. I think we're really understanding this more deeply as long as we've known you, and that you've done this project, to understand that this is way more than just a bunch of cool pictures of some folks from a few years ago, that this is, and to come to the point where it was your family and you were kind of like, don't talk about it. It was like, you knew about some of it, but it was like, and now to where you are sitting here sharing your feelings with us is next.
For us, it's their story, and it should be given back to them, and for them to talk about, and we're just the catalyst. And it's our small duty to give them access to this. So the book production and the donations, we will, as soon as we can get that far, be giving the digital files to the tribal offices, which, like Hopi, I've sent them full res digital files of everything, because they wanted to put up new images in their conference room and around their office spaces. And I'm like, absolutely. These aren't our images. They're your images. And we, as we go and as we can, it's important to us that they get all these, because they don't necessarily know of where to get full access to them or have access, period, because they're in our hands and they're unpublished. And so
So this is just both stuff that Curtis did and stuff that you've done too recently, both.
yes.
Yes, through the Descendants Project and then the unpublished series.
Yes. One of my goals is to be able to print and frame images of especially all the unpublished work, but a lot of them don't have the published work either, but to be able to print those and frame those and have them for every tribe that Curtis photographed, give all the Navajo images to the Navajo, and all the Sioux or Lakota, get all of theirs, and they can display them for their people. One of our other projects is that we're just now kind of getting started is a program with the schools where we print photographs from that region and make posters for them to put up in their schools. There's a couple schools in New Mexico that have already requested and said, our children in our school, which is majority Native Navajo, they don't have any ancestor photos to look up to and to esteem to. And
To get them to that early age of children too.
right.
Yes.
To instill that pride. And so we're starting to work on a curriculum and posters to be able to put into the schools, and the curriculum will be done by Natives. It will not be done by white people, which is important to them, and it needs to be their voice again. And that's something that we've had to learn, is how to step away and not go, this is mine, this is Curtis.
Right.
No,
That vehicle
we are the vehicle.
Well, how exciting for you to be able to, you're really connecting generations here.
The big difference on the tissue prints in the volume versus the portfolio, the portfolio had a plate number in the upper left-hand corner. Volume prints did not. And so there's just all kinds of text describing their lives, their ways, their culture, their religion, their food, their dress, their government. all throughout the book for each of the tribes. I think back on this last trip up into Montana and working with Shawnee Reelbird. This is a very young person. She's what, 26?
25.
25. And so that's her physical being, but the knowledge and the information and the emotion she shares, she's obviously an old spirit.
Been around it for.
She's been around, yes, obviously.
Listening to her is like reading poetry, native poetry, Crow poetry. Her grandfather was Montana's state poet laureate for several years. And so that storytelling, and I think that cadence and has come from him, which she's very, very close to him. And
She's done amazing things.
it's just so,
A young person, she became a commercial pilot for Delta. First female Native American commercial pilot for them.
from the Northern Plains,
From Northern,
Crow.
yeah, and she did this at an early age, and she loves horses, and so when we do the Descendants Project pictures, trying to avoid some of the criticism my great-grandfather gets about staging and dressing, I tell every person that we work with, you pick the location, you come dressed as you want to be remembered. And that's how we do it. And she wanted to be photographed with her plane and a horse on the runway at an airport.
In her traditional elk tooth wool trade blanket dress. She had her grandfather's war bonnet. Was it her grandfather's or one of her family members, which is something traditional to do. And yeah.
I had two preconceived images before we ever got out there. I had this thing in my head about her and her horses.
Because we talked to her so much.
And she explained, well, I want to be photographed with horses in the plane. 2 different photo sessions. And so I had this vision of me shooting from an elevated angle, her stationary, so she's sharp and in focus. And because of the film speed, I can do fairly slow shutter speed. And I wanted horses moving around her alert. And she pulled this off for us. And
so we went out into their acreage, which is a large area, with an ATV, and got to help round up the horses and got to take wild horse photos in the meantime. But round them up and get them down into the corral. And so we had 15 horses in this in this corral, and they're wild horses. They're not, you're going to walk up and pet them.
Right.
And so we, through the help of a couple other people there, got them to move around her, and it was
It's
just
one of the last shots that I did that. I'm up on the tailgate of my Ford shooting down at her, and she's sitting in the corral with these wild horses moving around her, and she goes into prayer to spirits.
With a long shutter, so the horses are moving.
Yeah. So the horses are moving, and she's stationary, and it was a spiritual experience. It was just incredible. And so the other picture that I did, she had some ideas, and Coleen did, around the airplane with the horse, which we got before airport personnel came out and says, you can't have the horse out on the runway, get it out of here. It's like, imagine that. Got the shot, yeah.
she'd gotten permission to be out there, and it was like their training school area, so it wasn't their main airport runway. But she hadn't necessarily gotten the permission for the horse.
Well, the head honcho didn't get that memo. Everybody else did, but the big guy, the
But
chief.
it was all okay, and we got it done, and we're going to send them copies of the images, and they're so excited.
You just did this recently too.
This
Yeah.
was like 2 weeks ago.
Okay, that recent.
Yeah.
So the last shot, I told Shawnee and one of the airport people, I said, I want your plane in the hangar, in the shadows, and you out in the light. And so we made that shot come off. And I had about 4 stops between her and those shadows. So it should fade out about the way I want. And she said that she wanted to do this picture for her people. And so I had everything all set up. And she says, don't take the picture yet. And she goes into prayer. And later she tells me she put herself in a Sundance at the pole attached and was praying. And she does her prayer dance, her Sundance prayer dance in front of the hangar with her airplane in the background. And I get that picture, and it's like, I might have orbs in the back. I don't know. We'll see. But it was deeply emotional for everybody that was there, and she was extremely emotional. I mean, she took herself to someplace very sacred. And,
But we've had a lot of sessions and interviews that have been this way, that are very emotional for them and for us, and what we learned from them. And it is just such an honor for us to have that ability to spend this much time with Native people in many different tribes, and to be able to grow from that and learn from them. And I wish that everyone could sit and spend a whole afternoon
I'm thinking I'm gonna be
talking.
yeah.
Yeah. And well, this last trip, John's sister Janet came with us, and she, for the first time, got to see what we do and experience what we get to experience out in the field, because we come back and we tell our board of directors all the things that we did, on this last Descendants trip, and or the people that we met and stories that we heard, but it's not the same as being there and hearing that person and getting to hear all the other things that don't happen on camera. And
Question.
yeah,
Do you have anyone documenting you as you're documenting?
we have
Not really.
not really. We have a gentleman that had started to and was spending time with us out in the field. He was born in Canada, raised in like Minnesota or Wisconsin, one of right up in there, and then decided, he's Jewish, and he decided to move back to Jerusalem, where he had family, and so he now resides there. And with the war going on, he's just very difficult for him. But
Cool to have some kind of archive of you guys doing what you're doing.
yeah,
Well, we grab an iPhone shot here and there.
yeah. But the hard part is the flexibility.
Sure.
You know, when we had, I keep talking about this Montana trip, but it's most recent. We had a schedule all laid out. I think one thing in almost 3 weeks' time happened when it was supposed to, or what we had originally.
It was close. That wasn't even on time, was
I'm
it?
thinking John Peppion,
Oh, yes.
yes, who is a very well-known ledger artist, which ledger art, which I can tell by your face, you don't know what it is.
What the heck is that?
When all the white colonists started moving west and killing off all the buffalo, and thus killed off a lot of the Plains tribes' food and just resource, because they used everything about a buffalo. It also took away their canvas. They would do their winter counts, which is like a story of what's happened that year. They would paint it on the buffalo hide. Well, as those hides became not available to use, they started using accounting ledger paper, because it was the only paper available. And so either plain ledger paper or paper that, actually has accounting done on it. And they would take that paper and they paint on it. And it's been my favorite kind of art, Native American art, for a long time. But there's a store in downtown Seattle in Pike Place Market called 8th Generation. And we've been there several times and always purchase things because we know that they're Native made, not Native inspired. So it's not, it's not white people taking the Native designs and making money on it. I'm supporting a Native artist. Well, as we became acquainted with John Peppion, I realized everything that I've bought from that store was his art.
No kidding. Phone cases, note cards, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and so then it was such an honor to meet him and get to spend the day with him. And we went into Glacier National Park. And when I said, "Do you want to go into Glacier National Park to be photographed?" Because he said, "I want to go to the mountains." And so when I asked about the park specifically, because I wanted to make sure we were on the same page, he said, "Oh, that's Blackfeet country."
Right.
And yes, it was Blackfeet country before we decided it needed to be a national park. So it has a lot of sacred places there. And so he took us to some of these places and mountains in the background that are sacred to his tribe, and got to photograph him there. And so all these amazing
experiences.
Amazing people that we've met. And one of the other things that we do is when we go to speak, if at all possible, if we're in those areas or we can get sponsorship, we bring in natives from that area, that tribal area, to speak for themselves and to tell their own story. And so we are working on a couple museum exhibits up that way, and if they pan out and there's presentations to be given,
Good.
they will be a part of it, and they will be able to tell their own stories.
Oh, cool.
Thought comes to my mind. I know we've talked about this before, and now we're hearing all you've been doing. How is this not overwhelming? How is this not? I mean, I know we talked about lack of sleep and time and travel and paying for it, but how's this just not blowing your mind? Like, I'm going to watch a movie instead, stay home. That's what I'd do, I think.
It can get overwhelming at times. Probably the stress is self-inflicted.
Sure.
To produce the material.
He tells me that all the time. Your deadlines are self-inflicted.
Yours aren't.
And mine are.
I think
I am a very deadline-driven person.
Yes, which is something that we're learning from our Native friends.
Let it go. It will happen in the time it's supposed to.
It does, and they even joke about Indian time. We have Pacific time, Mountain time, Central, and Then there's this time zone called Indian time. And it's a real thing. They joke about it themselves. But things like Colleen's saying, they happen when they're supposed to happen. You can set an appointment for 10 a.m. It might happen at 1. When it's ready to happen, it happens. And it's kind of interesting. So early on, that caused a lot of anxiety, at least for me. It's like, we got a schedule, we got to, and especially on this last trip, we've gotten to a place where we can just kind of let it happen. And
We know to allow extra time, extra days.
and ultimately, if it's meant to be, it will be. If it's not meant to be, it doesn't happen.
Well, I think that's another American thing is these time zones and stay on time. Because when I've spent time in Cuba, it's like, we'll be there, we'll get there, we get there.
Same thing.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just how it is.
One final question that I have at this point anyway, and we know a lot of our viewers, and you know this question was going to come up sooner or later once I started, as a team, husband and wife, and the success that you've achieved with your work and your project, what's the secret to making it all happen and compromise?
My wife is so smart.
You get to answer for her too in a moment.
Well,
That's our phrase when
we joke about that, and I do use it often. Colleen's an incredibly intelligent and driven and passionate woman. And we talk about this in the scope that if it were just me by myself, none of this would have happened. If it was just Colleen by herself, none of this would happen. There's just something together that motivates us to keep going. And it's we don't even really talk about it in depth to that extent. It's just we share an equal passion for the natives that we work with. We see all the injustice that's been done to them, and we believe through our work, especially the Descendants Project, maybe there is a small chance we can erase some of those stereotypes, some of the biases, and teach people all you gotta do is sit down and listen. We're all the same, you know.
So I think our passions are equal, and it's rare that you find someone that you can spend 24/7 with.
No, yes.
And we do. We it's, we have our differences once in a while, but for the most part,
My wife is so smart.
The right perspective, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, right perspective, and not just the project, but that point as well. So I think that's going to keep you. So wonderful story. Thank you for sharing all this with us. But I see this project doesn't end. I mean, there's possibilities for us to continue. What do you see for this to carry on for even after you have quit doing this?
Jeff, that's a great question. And one of my board members asked that recently at a board meeting. It's my oldest sister, Ann. And she says, well, what happens after the Descendants Project? As we have this goal, 30 descendants, a book, an exhibit, and then what, right? So on our last trip, I was playing with this idea, and we've talked about this. And I got to thinking, well, so Curtis was 4 generations ago, and then here we are working with descendants of the people that he worked with. What if we can set the foundation up so that in 3, 4, 5 generations, somebody else picks it up again, and they pick these same stories up with descendants of them, looking at the ancestors we worked with today, looking at the ancestors Curtis worked with. How powerful would that be to keep this whole thing going for multi-generations into the future?
That would be fascinating to do that.
I hope we can somehow, honey. From time to time, I get asked what kind of equipment my great-grandfather used for his North American Indian project, and what kind of equipment am I using? Well, Great-Gramps used a large format camera, and he had a plethora of different formats that he used. The largest that we're aware that he used was an 18-inch by 22-inch view camera with a 4-foot bellows. all the way down to 5x7. Early in his career, I think probably predominantly he was shooting 11x14 in the field. As you can imagine, this is heavy and bulky. He got turned on to the Kodak Primo Reversible, which was a whole plate format, or 6.5 inch by 8.5 inch, and that's what the bulk of the material was that he produced. So starting out in our Descendants project, I wanted to emulate the look and feel that Curtis captured. And I tried that digitally with my D850. I tried several different lenses. The first lens in my bag that I went to was the 85 1.4, which is a beautiful lens, but it's still a little bit too much depth of field. So I tried tilt shift. I tried a Petzval made in Russia. And the thought was, well, one of these combinations, along with our skill in Photoshop, and we'd get the look and feel. Couldn't do it. Digital just captured way too much detail compared to analog film. So I told my wife, Coleen, I says, honey, we can't do it digitally. We've got to go back to analog and shoot old school film. She's a little bit nervous about that, but I had quite a bit of experience with large format view cameras back in photography school and past that. So mid 70s to early 90s before I stopped using the view camera. So we get into the project. I've got to get a view camera. We ended up with the Chamonix view camera. Quinn Jacobson helped get me set up and got me some lenses to go. And so that's what this camera is. This is a whole plate, 6.5 inch by 8.5 inch size negative. I've got a Turner Reich lens mounted on here, which we think is the same lens or very similar to what Curtis used. And it renders images almost identical to the views that I see my great-grandfather doing. It's got a Betix number 4 shutter. So fastest shutter speed I'm capable of with this setup is 50th of a second, wide opens f8. And that's what I shoot with. At the back of the camera, it's got the ground glass view. So I have a dark shield that I put over here and look under here to do my focus and composition. When I've got that all set and I'm ready to shoot, this back just comes off. And I put on my film back. So when I've got the film back on, loaded with my glass plate, and I'm ready to photograph, dark slide comes out, hit the cable release, make my exposure, plate goes back in, and I can take this back off and put another one on loaded with film. So this is an example that came out of this camera. This whole plate glass negative, 8.5 by 6.5, fits back in there, and away we go. What we have here are a couple volumes of the North American Indian that Curtis produced. And I wanted to show how they would come to a subscriber in a box. I don't think most people get to see this. So it'd come in a box, and then you take your volume out, and it was also inside of a bag, a paper bag with the Curtis Studio address and such on there. So this volume, this is one of the top of the line. So it's got leather on here bound. It's got gold leaf. The rest of the edges are deckled edges. And inside the volume, early on, you're going to find family notes. So they'll have a set number, and these are both set 86. Set 86 was Edward Curtis's private set, and it's listed on the laureate list as such. So these are tissue photogravures in this volume, and a photogravure hand printed one by one. So they took a lot of time and effort to do these. We've got tissue paper in between, and then the introduction forward by Teddy Roosevelt. There's an introduction by Curtis. And then this chapter 1 in this particular volume jumps right into the Teton Sioux. Isn't that beautiful? And then he goes on with his field research and general description of the Teton Sioux. There's more pictures throughout. The big difference on the tissue prints in the volume versus the portfolio is the portfolio had a plate number in the upper left-hand corner. Volume prints did not. And so there's just all kinds of text describing their lives, their ways, their culture, their religion, their food, their dress, their government, all throughout the book for each of the tribes. But
You've been listening to Conversations with John and Coleen Graybill as we chatted with them about John's great-grandfather, Edward Curtis, and his phenomenal portraiture and writings of the Native American back in the early 1900s. You can find out a lot more about the foundation by going to curtislegacyfoundation.org. So glad you tuned in. Stay tuned. We'll have a lot more great conversations in the near future.